This is Ceadeus, also known as the Shining Giant of the Depths, the Great Sea Dragon, or simply just the final boss of Monster Hunter Tri, and I think there's something really compelling about it. Not many monsters in the series come off so grand and majestic, and even fewer are able to leave such a striking impression. So in this video, we'll take a look at how it's been designed and figure out what makes it feel so special. On a visual level, Ceadeus is a mashup and exaggeration of existing animals. You've got the size, pectoral fins and long tail that most obviously resemble a whale, and it's all stretched out to give it a more serpentine body reminiscent of a classic sea serpent. It's got these gigantic horns like a bull's that rest on its head, and its jaws look quite like those of Dunkleosteus, which was an ancient armoured fish. The sheer size of the horns and this resemblance to a bygone fish give me the impression that this thing is old, a notion deepened by the big bushy beard it's got running down its neck. This all makes for an impressive profile, made all the more interesting by how unique it is compared to other monsters in the game. In Tri, Ceadeus is the only monster in the game that you fight exclusively underwater. All the other aquatic monsters can also pop out and fight on land too, which adds variety to the gameplay but does put constraints on their designs. To put up a decent fight out of the water, every monster needed legs and feet, something usually absent on most marine animals. I don't mean to suggest this makes them look worse, and often they blend in really well, like on Lagiacrus and Gobel, but there's still this sense that you're not really fighting something that lives entirely underwater. There's no sharks or octopus or plesiosaur inspired monsters. Some of Tri's monsters have even shown up in games without underwater combat, and while they often lose a bit of the fun factor being fought only on land, they still manage to be entertaining. Ceadeus being fought entirely underwater removed this pretty significant restraint on the designers, letting them create something that looks like a proper sea monster. I think it's way more interesting for it, although it does unfortunately illustrate why for gameplay it was best to have most monsters able to fight in both environments. It's not particularly fun to spend the first chunk of the hunt slowly swimming after it as it plods along through an underwater cave network. It's also worth mentioning the reason it's down there in the first place, because it starts setting up some of those more special properties. Tri's story has you taking on the role of a hunter in Moga Village, a quaint little community built right on the shoreline of a beautiful island. Life here is simple and happy but precarious, with frequent earthquakes threatening to sink the whole place. Initially, a Lagiacrus is blamed for the seismic activity, but in Monster Hunter storytelling's go-to twist, this turns out to be a red herring. Instead, Ceadeus is causing the quakes. One of its horns has grown too big and covered one of its eyes, causing pain that it's been attempting to ease by grinding its head along the seafloor and walls of the underground caves. While understandable, it's too dangerous to let it continue doing this, so you need to swim down and put a stop to it. I'm sure most people know that Monster Hunter comes from Japan, an island nation frequently racked by earthquakes. By some estimates, they see somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000 each year. Since around the 16th century, there have been myths and folk stories that say that these quakes are caused by a gigantic catfish called Namazu that lives under Japan. Restrained there by a god, Namazu waits until its captor drops his guard and then thrashes around, causing the earthquakes that devastate the surface. Namazu are depicted in plenty of traditional artwork, including this rather relevant one of a bunch of people beating the shit out of it. It's pretty common for the design team to pull inspiration from tales and concepts like this, and I wouldn't be surprised if this is where the idea for Ceadeus first started to take form. I do want to mention that nobody at Capcom has confirmed this, it's just me spotting a potential inspiration, and you're free to disagree, although I do think this is one of the less unhinged leaps in logic I've done on this channel. Something interesting about the myth is that Namazu is not seen exclusively as a negative force. After a particularly bad earthquake near modern-day Tokyo in 1855, Prince appeared where the catfish got the moniker God of World Rectification. The extremely summarized version of events is that Japanese society was going through a particularly rough patch at the time, felt especially by the lower classes. After the destruction caused by the earthquake, vast amounts of money were put into rebuilding efforts, which created job opportunities and shifted the balance of wealth a bit from rich to poor. In many of the prints from the time, you can see gold coins that have been scattered by the earthquake that symbolize this. And printed on one is a phrase saying world fixing, rebuilding. There's a link in the description if you want to read about this in more detail, but the point is to say that Namazu isn't seen purely as some kind of entirely evil being, which is all very reminiscent of how Ceadeus comes across. Yes, it causes dangerous earthquakes, but it's not doing so intentionally, and there's nothing particularly malicious about how it looks. Instead, it feels a bit mythical, magical, light and positive. The name alone starts reaching for some idea of this. Deus means god or deity in Latin, and I'm assuming that the CEA at the beginning of the word is supposed to be pronounced C, making it literally sea god. It's a bit on the nose, but at least there's no room for misinterpretation. So after chasing it through those underground channels, the last stage of the fight takes place in these vast underwater ruins, where Ceadeus starts to glow with bioluminescence all across its body. When it rears up, you can see there's 2 of these spots along the roof of its mouth, making it look like some kind of gigantic spirit, an effect I imagine would be heightened if the arena was a little bit darker. There's 2 other elements that work to help it feel mythical in this final area, which are the music and the ruins themselves. The theme is sung in a gibberish language, but lyrics were actually given in one of the art books, but I don't think it's too important to dwell on that. The way it's chanted is enough to get the idea that this is some special, almost holy event. Along with the chanting, you've got these pretty simple acoustic instruments, and to me, they really capture the idea of a grand sea. It's something about the deep bangs of the drums and the higher pitched tinklings in between, like you've got the calm surface of the shoreline and the vastness below the waves. I'm not good at describing music, but it's the kind of song I imagine people living somewhere like Moga would come up with. Their lives are dictated by the whims of the sea, how much fish are around to catch, who sails across to trade with them, are the weathers and winds kind. You get the impression they really respect this environment, and in general it's attentions like this that I think give Monster Hunter Tri such a special identity. The ruins themselves are also really interesting. Moga Village seems to survive just about on subsistence. It's tiny and has a small population of permanent residents, with wooden houses and buildings that are all small and clustered snugly together. The current village lies in complete contrast to the huge stone ruins lying drowned in this final area. In the story, you're told that these belong to a civilization that came before Moga, long since destroyed by earthquakes. These people even managed to create a huge Dragonator weapon in one of their structures, a feat that's hard to imagine happening again in the present day. This is the deepest you're able to swim in the entire game, otherwise you're in rivers or close to the shoreline. In some of these areas you could spot some small ruins, but nothing on the scale of what's in Ceadeus' lair. Compared to everything else, it's a huge difference, and might make you wonder what else could be down there, submerged under all the water. There's an inherent mystery to what might be lurking in the sea, and while underwater combat isn't for everyone, it does let the game play with ideas like this that it otherwise couldn't. All of this combines to make the fight not seem like some struggle against a destructive, malevolent force, but some wondrous encounter with a mythical being. When you do this quest at the designated time in the story, it's not even possible to kill it. You cut off the horn that was irritating it and then deal enough damage to repel it. Plenty of the older games do this with elder dragons. If you don't kill them in an allotted time but have managed to deal a decent chunk of damage, then you repel them and still clear the quest. The next time you would go and hunt that same elder dragon, all the previous damage would carry over. As far as I know though, Ceadeus is the only time where the final boss of the story is impossible to kill the first time you clear the quest. It then appears in the final cutscene, breaching out in front of the sunset before swimming off, content not to cause earthquakes anymore now that its horn has been clipped. It's a bit unusual for these games, and makes the whole thing feel more special. There's a very folklore feel to it, something you can imagine passing into legend. One time there was a big fish whose pain caused earthquakes, so the bravest person in the village swam down to its lair, removed the source of its pain, and sent it on its way. The whole hunt seems centered around creating this sense of wonder, and I think that's what makes it so compelling. And the way much of this comes from how it was placed in the game makes me think that it won't hit the same way should it return in a new release. It feels like a hunt unlike any other, and exemplifies some of the things that made Tri feel so special. Thanks for watching, take care, and I'll see you in the next one.